Hello! Today we're going to be looking at lines and equations of lines and figuring out information about those lines. So in my first question I have y equals 6x minus 3, and I want to find what the slope and the y-intercept are for that equation. Now the y-intercept is the place where this line would cross the y-axis. So if I were to draw a rough sketch of this, something like that, this point right here would be 0, comma b. That's the location where we cross the y-axis, and we use b to represent the y-intercept. So I can also say that this is b equals. Anyway, so we know that anywhere on the y-axis my x value is 0, so I can take my x and make it equal to 0. So if I do y equals 6 times 0, then minus 3. 6 times 0 is 0, so we end up with y equals negative 3. And so my b is negative 3. You may also be able to write the point as 0, comma, negative 3, either one. So there's the y-intercept. Okay. We also want to find the slope for this. Now the slope, what you notice with this term, each time you increase the x by 1, my y value ends up going up by 6. So if I were to make an xy chart out of this, if I put 1 in for x, I'm going to get 3. If I put 2 in for x, I get 9. If I put 3 in for x, I get 13. And you can see each time the x goes up by 1, the y value goes up by 6. So my rate of change tells me that as y changes, so my delta y is 6 over my delta x, which is 1. There's my slope. So my slope is 6 over 1, or just 6. Well, this number right here in front of x is always going to give you the slope, because that tells you how much x changes as y changes. So this gives us the equation y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. Okay, so that's a big time equation that we're going to have. It helps us out a lot when we're writing equations like this. All right, in this example, what we want to do is write the equation for a line. We have a slope of 5, and we're going through the point negative 2, comma 8. So if I use that equation we just found, y equals mx plus b, we actually have some good information here. We know that my slope, my m, is 5. Let's make that look a little nicer. M equals 5. Okay? However, we don't know b. B is our constant that we need to put in here yet. Whereas y and x are variables. They need the chance to vary. So they cannot have a number in for them at all times, because those numbers are never going to stay the same. So what we can do, however, is use the ordered pair, x comma y up here, and replace them temporarily so that we can find b. So instead of y, I write 8 equals m, which is 5, times x, which is negative 2, still plus b, which I don't know. And then we just use our algebra to solve for b. So 8 equals negative 10 plus b. We add 10 to both sides. So we get 18 equals b. And so then my equation, what we get to write here, remember y is a variable, it has to stay y. M is a constant, it's going to remain 5 the whole time. X is a variable, it has to have a chance to vary, plus b, which we said was 18, that is a constant and it shall stay. And there we are. We actually have another equation that helps us though. If you remember the slope equation, m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, what I can do is multiply both sides of this equation by x2 minus x1. These will cancel, one's on top, one's on bottom, and so I end up getting I'll write the y2 minus y1 on the left equals m, still multiplied by x2 minus x1. And what I want to do is I want to use my one set of variables, which I know are x and y, so I'm going to replace y2 with that, with my y, and I'll replace x2 with just x. So those are my variables going in there, and then x1 and y1 are one point that we're going to use to make this line. So what we have here is called the point-slope form of an equation. It is developed from the actual slope formula, and you should definitely have that written down in your notes. But we can use that to also write the equation for this line. So I know my x1 is going to be -2 from the ordered pair up here. There's x1. My y1 is going to be 8 from that same ordered pair. And then I know my slope is 5. So we plug that stuff in. Y minus 8 equals 5 times x minus -2. And what we want to do is get y by itself here because it'll help us pick out the slope and y-intercepts. We actually do want it to look like this in the end. Well, we'll simply, we have to make this plus a positive. Y minus 8 equals, we'll distribute the 5 through, so 5x plus 10, and then we're going to add 8. So y is equal to 5x plus 18, and we're done.